Hi, this is Kara. Welcome to Glazing with AMACO. And today I'm going to talk about Black Aventurine. So this is our first time with a selfie video. So you can actually see me, hopefully. If we're having any trouble with the video, I'm not sure. So anyway, we're going to go to our glaze. So today I wanted to talk about Black Aventurine PC-65, and here is our sample dish using PC-65. So you can see it has, it's a dark glaze. It has a little bit of sparkle, almost like a microcrystal developing, and it goes from being matte in some areas, glossy where it's a little thick, and it breaks across texture. And it's sort of a bronzy color where it creates those crystals. So what I wanted to show you today is I'm going to use a combination of oatmeal as my base with Black Aventurine over it. So here's my sample pot. So this was 2 coats of oatmeal with 2 coats of Black Aventurine over. So to get started, I have my oatmeal. I'm shaking the table a bit. Now today I'm just going to glaze the outside. I'll come back and do the inside at a later time. And I usually just use a brush to get the inside, but if I'm using a very fluid glaze, which the Black Aventurine is very fluid and is not too thick in the jar, I may just pour it in. Depends. If it's too thick, you can use distilled water and suspendade to make it a good dipping or pouring consistency. So I start at the bottom, work my way up. Get into all of that texture. So while that is drying, I'm going to move that off to the side, set my oatmeal off to the side. And I wanted to show you some samples. So I showed you this, which is the oatmeal. Do I have that cup? And that was my sample cup. So you can see it comes out a little differently, but it's still really a phenomenal combination. So there's the oatmeal. I also have, this is Black Aventurine over Ancient Jasper. Is that PC-53? I can't tell. PC-53, Ancient Jasper. Again, just really might be difficult to see. I'm working on getting a better lighting set up. But it does do a really beautiful kind of hare's fur sort of texture. This one is Iron Luster. And you can see it breaks kind of a reddish brown across the top. And I'm going to have to take a photo and post it to the video later, but it makes very tiny gold dots in the glaze as it runs. Really interesting. This is Black Aventurine over PC-70 Copper Red. And it mostly bleeds the color out and you end up with green, but towards the bottom there are some purples that are just phenomenal. Again, I will have to shoot some stills after this. This is the Black Aventurine over PC-34 Light Sepia. And I just found this really an interesting texture and visual texture. It's almost matte, but it just gives such an interesting way it flows is just phenomenal. I know I'm showing you so many. This is bluestone with the Black Aventurine over it, and it's glossy in some areas, matte in others, just an interesting thing, and the way it runs over texture, really phenomenal. Double checking, this is sage. PC-44 sage is a lovely, almost minty kind of green, but it does have some red, kind of pinkish highlights in some areas. But with the Black Aventurine, there's some blue and these metallic areas, kind of metallic dots developing. Really just an interesting combination. Sage is usually really stiff as a base, so it can be hard to find something that looks really phenomenal over it. But I thought that this PC-44 Sage with the PC-65 Black Aventurine was just a beautiful, beautiful combination. And then last of all, this is Ancient Copper with the Black Aventurine over, and it just did an interesting kind of thing. So I thought that I would bring this in last and show you how that looks. And let's see, is this ready? I'm going to end up with glaze on my fingers, but you guys are used to seeing glaze on fingers, so let's get a second coat of oatmeal on here, and then I'm going to show you a vase. So now, as you can see, I always am a very generous glazer, nice juicy coats, kind of floated on there. Don't let the brush get dry and drag. It's almost more like basting the glaze on. Okay, here's coat number 2. So that's my 2 coats of oatmeal. And while that dries, let's see. Now, one thing to be very cautious about with Black Aventurine, it is very much related to our other Aventurine glaze, but this is just a very, very dark version of it. It does run, and so be aware, it will run, and especially at cone 6. So this is a really lovely example of it. You can see how my texture in this is vertical, which encourages the glaze to run, and run it did, right all the way down to the foot, and I'll have to use a grinder to get all of that off. So this was fired to cone 6. So be very cautious when using it. Use it high if you're going to use it all by itself. I recommend using only 1, maybe 2 coats at the bottom. Sort of taper it off as you go down so that the upper area runs, the lower area is a little bit stiffer. Let me see, I think I have a comparison of cone 5 to cone 6. Yes. There we go. This is at cone 5, a little bit more satiny. Cone 6, you can see it doesn't really make that much difference. It's about the same. These are both on 11M AMACO clay, which is a white stoneware, and there's not much difference. You're not going to have a huge change between cone 5 and cone 6. So when I glazed this sample vase, I kept the Black Aventurine very, very high. It is 2 coats, but I kept it up high. And you'll also notice that this vase, the texture of the slip that was applied on here is mostly horizontal rather than vertical. If it were vertical, the glaze would tend to run a lot more. But being horizontal, it slowed the glaze down. So you get these areas like here like here where it kind of catches and pools, and you get some really beautiful effects with it. I mean, I see purples and golds and blues, black and metallic. It's all kinds of colors in there. Beautiful effects, but it slows the glaze from running right off the pot. If you have vertical texture, Black Aventurine may very well run right off of your pot. Still a little bit damp, so I'm going to set that aside. And let's see, I have a sample of a piece glazed a couple of weeks ago. This is Honey Flux over Satin Aribe. And isn't that, it's a nice effect. So the satiny texture, and then it's more blue, more green, almost like a celadon green at the top, flowing into this beautiful blue. But the Satin Aribe is just such a nice base with this texture on it. Lovely combination. So I cannot tell if we have any comments. Do we have any comments today? I would like to ask you all, so as we're getting more used to this setup, do you have any topics that you would like me to go over in the live feed videos? Are there artist features that you would like me to do? We may be doing some different segments in the videos. So we could do frequently asked questions, user-generated questions, or interviews with artists or people here at AMACO. We certainly have a lot of topics that could be discussed, just a matter of what kind of thing interests you. And I see, let's see, oh, there we go. Melanie Waters says, your dark red underglaze is practically a solid mass. So you can add distilled water and gum solution to your underglaze if it's thickened. If it's really hard, it might not be easy to reconstitute it. If it's relatively new, you might want to contact our tech support department. And I'm not sure why it's not letting me. Oh, here we go. How can we watch live on TV? I don't know. We're not streaming live on YouTube, Bev. So at some point we will be streaming live, and then you can watch these live on YouTube. But currently the videos are live on Facebook, and then we download them to YouTube. And man, this glaze does not want to dry today. So there will be a time when you can get our AMACO Glaze live videos on your YouTube, on your television, but that time hasn't come yet. So you can access the videos. You can access the videos on your YouTube TV by going to AMACO Brent and going to our upload section. You're welcome, Bev. So I know that there's a little bit of lag on our videos, and I'm still waiting for this glaze to dry. This would be a great time to have an artist segment, wouldn't it? Well, it looks like mostly it's the glaze around the bottom, so I'm going to just do a quick brush of glaze around the top, except that it's going to run down. So you'll notice I often hold things sideways to make sure they don't run right off the pot. So as I said, I just did 2 coats of the Black Aventurine, and since this is relatively thin, I'm actually going to do a pour on the inside. Sorry, I'm out of frame. Oh, Bev, did you not see the beginning of the video where I actually did have my face on here, but I can do it again at the end. Ah. There we go. So I'm going to let that dry. Maintenance of glazes and underglazes, that is a great thing to talk about. Definitely, I will discuss that. That is a whole thing. And how to store them, how to thin them. I don't recommend sieving any glazes, and I never sieve a glaze unless it's a glaze that I'm mixing for the first time. But the jar glazes should not need to be sieved. And even when there are oolites in a glaze, I don't sieve my glazes. So let's see if I can. I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to put that last coat on after we're done, but you can see how I only brought that down just a little ways. And if you can see to compare, you can see how it ran quite a bit from that top collar down. But by just applying a very runny glaze right at the top and having a horizontal texture, it really helped to keep the glaze from running down onto the pot. You can see there was no running at all. Oh, and that's my code, PC-65 Black Aventurine over PC-31 oatmeal. And that's my general technique. If you're worried about glazes running, try to keep them near the top or use something that's runny. Oatmeal is incredibly runny as a glaze when it's used as a layering glaze, but when it's used by itself, it's actually quite stable. So near the bottom, it does not run. So I'm going to quickly just sign off, and I'll say hi everybody, and I'll say goodbye, and I hope to see you next week, and we will discuss some of the other things that we talked about. I do have some things prepared about using snow versus using mixing clear, using underglazes, because that's something that I've been asked a few times. But I'll also talk about glaze maintenance, keeping your glazes fresh, and how to keep them usable as long as possible. So thanks for joining me, and I hope you have a great week, and happy glazing!